welcome back to HEMA Fight Breakdowns. Today we're going to be doing another Messer exchange, and one in which a half sword is used, which I think is pretty interesting. So that's the exchange, and you probably noticed where it happened because it's pretty easy to see right here. So, as we were talking about last video with Messer is a very interesting weapon because of how short it is and how grapple heavy it can become. And as I said in that last video, that's specifically because when you're using a weapon with that little hand protection and that short of a reach, it's sort of inevitable that every time you miss a cut or a thrust or get parried in any capacity, your own forward momentum is going to carry you directly into this grapple range. So if you look a little bit further back where the initial parry happened, right here, look at how close these two people are. And this is with the half sword one. I believe there was even an earlier cut where they were also just extremely close, because right here, you've parried successfully, and look how close your arm is to your body. Look how close that person is when their foot lands to you. You're going to have to land eventually here, and the second they do and this response cut is thrown, their feet are practically in almost like a boxing range. Like they're almost close enough to be able to punch each other in the face, let alone cut each other with a weapon. So something like half sword, which normally you only really see in armored fighting or situations where you know you're going to be so close that your shoulders are touching, it becomes a little bit more viable, because what you're trying to do with something like a half sword is put up a structured block that is just trying to zone out an entire area. Sort of like how someone might do if they were throwing a Zornhau. You want to clear off an entire area, in this case, your entire upper area and upper openings with this, and you want to have the structure as you go forward so that this side of your blade can't collapse in towards your body. You want to have not just a strong bind when you have your parry, but a bind that you can immediately transfer from where you are directly into a grapple. And you see, you're using a principle here that I normally recommend when trying to stuff Zverkows, which is just to take your sword and all of your forward momentum and push it directly into their lead sword hand. And the reason this works is because as you're putting that pressure forward, if the other person tries to pull back, well, you're going to stick to them, just like it happened here. And more importantly, if they try to just kind of push that over the top and try to lever over their blade to try to get something out of it, chances are that backward momentum and that backward force is going to stuff any kind of cut you throw, so you just don't have the opportunity. And then here, both people, immediately recognizing that it's a grapple situation, try to take control of the other person's sword. This person grabs the sword here, and this person grabs the sword here. I almost wish that the person on the left hadn't let go of the half sword that they had earlier, because I feel like there's an advantage that half sword gives you, which is that it allows you to take both of your hands and put it at maximum leverage on the sword. So much so that if someone reaches up and grabs your sword in between your hands, it's not completely debilitating. So if you think about it, when someone else has their hand on your sword and you have your hand, it's just one hand on your sword, they have complete control over this. They can pretty easily just twist their arm over or under, and your arm and your sword is going wherever they want it to go. And as you see what happens specifically here, it gets pulled down, and there's, no matter how much stronger or how much weaker the other person is than you, this is a position of complete leverage and dominance. So you just have no choice in what you do with your sword anymore. So from this position, they push basically the opponent's sword, the person on the right does, up underneath to get an outside line, and tries to free up their sword arm. So when you push someone else's arm across their own body, what it does is it starts to rotate this lead shoulder. And when you're rotating your lead shoulder forward, your now back shoulder is going to get pulled back. So the entire grip here and the defensive motion here that's keeping this person from clubbing them with their sword is basically the ability for the person on the left to continue to drive force forward in towards their opponent's lead hand. So when you force them to rotate their shoulders away, even if you don't get this shoulder to move, you do prevent it from extending further. And now that the hand is free and this shoulder can no longer keep up with this hard hand pulling back, they have a position of complete dominance where this person has to desperately try to catch their opponent's sword out of the air before it's too late. And as we see here, it's not fast enough. They get to kind of throw that little jabbing stab here where right when they pull their sword back, they get to kind of jab forward. And I think they don't quite make it all the way in before the hand kind of gets in the way. But immediately after, because they don't have their hand on their sword yet, they can just pull it back and go for something else. And then there's another wrap. And this is a very typical situation that you see here, which is once you get into this wrestling area, you have to be careful about what follow-up you choose to do because, again, the sword is so short that when you're trying to throw a cut, there's always the possibility that they could just catch your arm out of the air again, like they do here. And, again, the sword is so short that when you're trying to throw that stab in the intermediary, they can easily just try to stuff your arm by just basically stiff-arming their left arm and trying to just get it in the way of your forearm. Because chances are your arm at its full extension is longer than a messer. So this is a very grapple-heavy weapon. It's a very grapple-heavy exchange. And I think it's a really good showcase of how fun and interesting messer can be as a weapon, even when you're dealing with situations that I think with most people, you'd think, oh, we'll just pull back and start, hacking away. So that's going to be it for today. If you'd like to see your own footage featured on the channel, feel free to send me an email over at HEMAFightBreakdowns@gmail.com, and I hope to see you next time.